What's going on, everybody? This is Afro Think Tank. Donald Trump owns slaves in America. Donald Trump owns shares in private prison corporations, and he's currently making profit off prisoners as we speak. And he's made more money off prisoners than he's ever had since he's been the president. So he is, in fact, a president that owns slaves. At first, people say, "Oh, is Donald Trump the worst president in America?" And I would say no, because there were 12 other presidents who actually owned slaves. So that would qualify them as the worst presidents in the history of America. But since Donald Trump actually owns slaves, and he's like legitimately owns slaves, and he's making billions of dollars off of it, probably more money than all the other 12 presidents who made profit off slavery, that would make him the worst. This would make him the worst president. Well, no, because George Washington did genocide Native Americans. Donald Trump probably would do that if there were more of them around to do that, but he's settling for the Mexicans right now, and Iranians, and financing the genocide of the Palestinians. So I guess if you really do add all this up, I guess he could be considered one of the worst. I'll give him number 2, because George Washington is still number 1, right? But number 2, I go ahead and give Donald Trump worst president in the history. If you just chalk up all the all the receipts, and there are a lot of other senators and congressmen who have an R beside them and have a D beside them who also make profit off the prison industrial complex. So we actually have the people who make the laws who are making profit off people being put into the criminal justice system, right? So where's the justice? Where is the justice when the prison system is making profit? So that means that they have an incentive, because it's a profit-making business, meaning shareholders want profit. That means you must do things in your corporation in order to ensure your profit. That means undercut the people who work for you, which are the prisoners, who are getting paid pennies on the dollar to perform work that other civilians should be getting. People who are not in prison should be getting paid decent living wages for. That's the country we live. We live in a country where the people who are in charge of us, the senators and the congressmen and the presidents and all manners of different government officials, right, elected and non-elected, are making profit off private prisons. Why is it that prisons are private? Prisons should not be for profit. They're supposed to be rehabilitation centers where you're supposed to rehabilitate an individual suffering from mental illness, because apparently everything white people do is all mental illness, right? Everybody else is because they're a terrorist, a savage, or a thug. But white people, it's mental illness. We got to blame it on somebody else. There's no way they did it. But there's no way. We should not. It should be a rehabilitation. There's other countries who have actual prisons that are rehabilitation centers, and it has already proven to work. So the concept of an actual rehabilitation center to rehabilitate people who need rehabilitation, and not just a imprisonment hotel where they're used as slaves and gladiators, because they do that shit too, right? So I think we need to bring to light that the people who are in charge of us right now currently are making money off of all of our family members who are unfortunate enough to make decisions that land them in jail, and that some of them shouldn't be in jail, and they were coerced or they were pigeonholed into doing something, or to confessing to doing something that made them a slave of the state, a slave of the federal government. We need a complete and total prison reform. But we need some serious overhaul of this slavery system that we keep dressing up as modern society. Of our slave masters that can continue to change their names and give themselves titles to mask their activities. It's time for we need a revolution, a real, solid, indistinguishable, it got to be indistinguishable from other revolutions. We need legitimate, people need to turn on the TV, turn on the internet, and see this revolution happening, because if not, we're just going to sit here and slow boil like that frog. And then, once that bubble pop, who knows what's going to happen. Anyway, you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. It's Afro Think Tank. Learn something, teach something. I'm out.
Donald Trump holds personal investments in multiple private for-profit prison companies that operate ICE detention facilities. His portfolio includes shares in Geo Group and CoreCivic, which are the two primary private contractors driving the U.S. immigration detention system. Since Trump's investment managers executed over 21,000 active security trades during his presidency instead of utilizing a blind trust, His personal wealth is directly tied to the financial performance of these contractors. ICE just owns 10 of its roughly 220 plus detention facilities. The agency relies entirely on private entities like GEO Group and CoreCivic to rent, staff, and run the operations. Since Trump was re-elected, GEO Group's annual revenue has expanded to $2.6 billion and CoreCivic's grew to $2.2 billion. In the first quarter of this year, GEO Group's net income nearly doubled and CoreCivic's profits have surged by 50%. As a result of this, both of their stock prices have skyrocketed 82% and 51% respectively. Trump's big beautiful bill gave $45 billion to ICE, flowing directly into these private detention contractors.
Greg Abbott has taken tens of thousands of dollars from the private prison companies that now operate these detention centers. CoreCivic and GEO Group are two of the big ones, right? And he, after taking that money, created a new kind of licensing that allows for locking up little kids and their parents in these detention centers. That's why it only happens here. Because of Greg Abbott. He's the Mordida governor. Greg Abbott is the Mordida governor.
I like that, the Mordida governor.
Yes. It's not mine. I got it from a friend in the valley.
Yeah.
But yes, he is the Mordida governor. And then what he did to make it even more profitable for these private prison companies, who they only exist to make money. Right? They are a for-profit corporation. That's not saying anything bad about them. That's just saying what's true. He took our Texas National Guard, ordered them to operate these detention centers. So now these private prison companies don't have to pay for the staff, right? They get a discount on staffing.
They get state employees.
They get state employees, and so they can further maximize their profits.
Yeah.
A follower brought this to my attention, and I really think it needs to get out there. And I think it needs to stay forefront. Things like this need to be put out there all the time. So share this. And any stories like this, share them. People need to hear this every day because we need to know what our government is about. Our current government consists of a whole bunch of con men, and they're ripping us off. So this story really needs some attention. Trump's 2025 financial disclosure shows his brokers started buying GEO Group stock 10 days after his inauguration. He also bought CoreCivic stock. Keep these two groups in mind as I speak. The watchdog group Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics counted 29 trades of those prison stocks since he took office. Next, this administration gave ICE $45 billion to expand detention. You following it? The Department of Homeland Security spent $2.2 billion buying CoreCivic facilities and paying $245 million a year to reopen others. GEO Group called 2025 the most successful period for new business wins in company history. Remember, Trump bought stocks in that. They get paid $236 to $481 per person per day. Stocks are up 82% for GEO Group and 51% for CoreCivic this year. Yeah. ICE arrests hit 238,000 plus in the 7 months of 2026. A former GEO Group executive, David Venturella, now runs ICE as acting director. Can you say corruption? Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, was a paid consultant for the GEO Group before rejoining the government in January of 2026. This isn't governance. This is a racket. Brokers trade the stocks, contracts fund the companies, former executives run the enforcement, and the public pays the tab. They are openly ripping off the citizens at the expense of innocent immigrants. And they're doing it in plain sight. He's a fucking con man, folks. He's openly robbing us. Please be sure your voter registration is in order. And please help others register. I'll leave links in the description and comments, as I always do. Give a like and a follow. I really appreciate it. Thanks, folks.
In the days since Donald Trump was elected, private prison stocks have fucking jumped. Here is a chart demonstrating that. If you're wondering, specifically, GEO stocks went up 35% and CoreCivic went up 27%. This is because of Trump's immigration policies, because these private prison companies handle a lot of the immigration detention. I don't really have anything else to say about it except behold that extremely steep spike.
It's because the Trump administration is funneling money to private prison companies, and in order for them to maximize their profits, they are not feeding people properly, they are not getting people proper health care and medical care, and they are doing things with maximum brutality possible because they are, in part, because this is a massive donor giveaway for private prison corporations. So understand that that is what is happening here. Those private prison companies, the two largest private prison companies that are benefiting the Trump administration because they're also giving kickbacks to the campaigns over here, are CoreCivic and Geo Group. And a lot of them, many private prison companies are traded on, are publicly traded companies. You can literally look up the stock prices for Geo Group and CoreCivic and look at their stock prices since the election.
Now, Dilley, Texas, man. Now you look at
Dilley, Raymondville, these are for-profit prisons that our tax dollars are actually paying and going towards, even in many cases where some of the people that were detained already signed their deportation orders and they're still being held there for 3 months.
They're getting the feria,
Because they're
man.
milking our tax dollars.
Yeah, I heard like
and
$1,800 a day per
I told all
person.
my conservative friends, I go, that's not conservative. I do not like my tax dollars going to try to punish people and be cruel to them.
Conservatives
Right?
want small government, but that just sounds like bigger
Oh, no,
government.
of
To
course
me,
not.
that sounds like
They-
more
no,
overreach than
They
like
actually
anything else.
funded ICE with more money
Yeah.
than the Marine Corps.
That's crazy.
Dude,
More
imagine that.
Look no further than the price tag of this bill, $83 billion. They know that it can't be paid for. They know that the capacity is not there. And you know what will be there? Private prison companies are going to get flooded with money, who give this money, no doubt. I want folks at home to look. Look at what members of Congress are invested in private prison companies who receive this kind of money, and look at the votes on this bill. It is atrocious that people are lining their pockets with private prison profits in the name of a horrific tragedy and the victim of a crime. It is shameful. It is absolutely shameful.
See, and you guys told me I was crazy when I said that we have to tax private prisons out of existence, out of profit, because the Milwaukee ICE Detention Center and all ICE detention centers are privately owned. It says it right here. The owner of Michigan ICE Detention Center reported $254 million in profit last year. The private prison company, you guys, Francesca Hong, doesn't have what it takes to stand up to the DHS and ICE. No Democratic politician has the cojones to stand up to the DHS, ICE, and the feds. Wisconsin rebuild will end Wisconsin's reliance on the federal government, and I guarantee it, through gridlock, if we have to.
I have found $1.5 billion of your taxpayer money. And I know where it went. It went to a private prison company called CoreCivic, and they used it to pay down their debt and also buy back their own stock. Where did they get the money? Well, they sold 2 detention facilities directly to ICE for $1.5 billion. Thousands of beds per facility, by the way. Thousands of beds per facility. And you know why it's interesting that they sold the facilities instead of like continuing to rent them? Because remember, if they rent the facilities back to the federal government, that's like a continual stream of money. Well, they sold them obviously because they needed the money, right? But why did the government buy them, right? Because it's a big expense to buy them. Well, the government bought them because they want to permanently have these facilities. ICE used its own like DHS authority, specifically around like their detention powers, which is the same thing that allows them to hold people indefinitely, to justify buying the buildings rather than continuing to lease the space inside of them. So now, owning those buildings, which means maintaining those buildings, which means having a reason to have those buildings, is now permanently baked into the federal balance sheet.
Remember, next time that somebody tells you that crime doesn't pay, they lied to you. Crime pays, and it pays well. In the United States, we spend over $80 billion annually on incarcerating people. But this doesn't even include what you see on the stock market. Here are 3 of the top prison stocks in the U.S. Number 1 is CoreCivic. They own over 100 prisons and correctional facilities across the United States. Their main business model is to get government contracts with states. What they promise to do is operate their prisons at a more cost-effective and efficient way than the government would have done. But here's the catch. The problem is that it's under the condition that these prisons operate at full capacity. And this is why I say human beings literally become a commodity to be traded on the stock market. And when President Obama was elected, he started doing away with this. But there was a big push by Trump and the Republican Party to bring private prisons back. And if we're completely honest, private prisons only make up 8% of the prisons across the United States, but it's still a large enough number to make a difference. And this doesn't even include all the privatization within the government-funded prisons. These are actual operated and ran private prisons. Companies like CCA, or Corrections Corporations of America, profits off the warehousing of human beings. Another problem with these private prisons is they usually get the best inmates. Low-level offenders, people that don't cause many problems. And this often leaves the government-ran facilities at the highest risk for violence. The next one is Serco. Now, Serco is based out of the UK, but it still operates in North America and across the globe. They mainly offer a bunch of services within the prison, like health, transport, immigration, defense. And Serco's not the only company that operates within prisons. You've got companies like Global Telink, you've got Securus, you've got Aramark, you've got Keefe. And companies like this usually have a monopoly on the prison system because there's no competition once they get the contract until that contract is up. And they're able to price gouge. That's how a 15-cent ramen noodle is able to go for $1 in prison. That's how they're able to charge damn near $3 for a 15-minute phone call. And $7 to watch a movie from 1996. The last one I'm going to talk about is the GEO Group, which they identify as a real estate investment company that invests in prisons and mental health properties all over the world. And again, this is another company that profits on the warehousing of human beings, where human beings become the commodity. And I could literally go on for an hour of all the predatory schemes that these corporations devise to profit off the warehousing of people.
The same private prison company that owns and operates Dilley Detention Center in Texas is trying to open up a new ICE facility in Minnesota that would house up to 1,600 people. So yesterday, the federal government posted a new performance work statement that lists the specifications that DHS is looking for because, quote, DHS/ICE needs to increase bed capacity to meet the administration's interior enforcement and border compression goals. And the document, which is freely available online, repeatedly refers to the people who would be housed in this facility as, quote, aliens, and lists that they would be responsible for the entirety of housing, transporting, and feeding the folks who would be housed here. And again, this facility would be run by CoreCivic, which is the same private group that operates Dilley Detention Center, in which there have been numerous protests in response to the inhumane conditions in that facility. And this is already insidious enough, but it gets even worse when you realize that Minnesota in 2023 effectively passed what is a ban on private prisons by barring the transfer of inmates to facilities that are not operated by the government. And the legislation was explicitly targeted at the exact facility that DHS is now trying to repurpose to keep people in a concentration camp. But the issue is that the ban doesn't cover federal facilities, and because the prison already has the proper zoning, CoreCivic doesn't really need any state or local entity to approve what it's doing. So then in pursuing the reopening of this facility, both CoreCivic and the federal government are just entirely overriding the will of the people of Minnesota to achieve their racist and xenophobic goals. And while this might be happening in Minnesota right now, I'm sure it's either actively happening or has already happened or will happen in the future elsewhere. And I think that what happens next is going to be a really important signal about how we can confront the expansion of these concentration camps in states across the country.
Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! Free Sudan! Boycott diamonds and gold! We most definitely cannot forget about the people of Sudan!
Thanks for watching Afro Think Tank. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And follow me on Substack and Patreon for more content. Remember, it's Pan-Africanism or nothing.